I'd like to introduce Liesl Rowe, who's a senior digital library advisor, in brackets copyright, who is from Leeds Beckett. So we've moved from the south coast now to the north, but not as far north as Newcastle. Liesl is going to talk about copyright and AI.
Brilliant, thanks, Liddy. As has been said, I'm the Senior Digital Library Advisor, but the shorthand is, and it's why we've got the little brackets in there, I'm the main copyright specialist. So in addition to doing things like heading up our digitalization team and doing quite a bit of sort of systems and tech and a little bit of work with our e-thesis team, it's copyright all the way down. But what that means is, obviously, with sort of the rise of generative AI, because I sit in a technology sort of based team, but also because of all my work around copyright, we've started looking into the tech. We've started considering what we can do as part of our institution, but some of the faults. So I'm just going to give you a sort of very quick rundown of where we're at. I'm just going to move on to the next slide. There we go. So massive quick fire run through what copyright actually is, and some of the basics that need to talk about before we go on. So I put the Oxford Dictionary definition up on the slide, but basically it's all to do with intellectual property is a kind of property. It is owned by the people who create it. They don't need to register it in any way, but they can choose to sell it. They can give it to other people. They can pass it on, etc. Some reuse is allowed. Copyright isn't just going, no, that's someone else's property, please don't. I've put them on the screen, but the big thing to note is that these exemptions all come with some conditions. The big ones being reuse has to be fair to the copyright holder, and some kind of acknowledgement of who owns the work needs to occur when practical. So to look at an academia example, when critiquing a work as part of a review, you need to be able to quote sections of text. However, it needs to be fair. You need to be obvious about why you're quoting it, such as making it clear you're giving an example of the author's argument. You also wouldn't be able to cite large sections of the text, just relevant excerpts. Ideally as well, you need permission from the copyright holder. Outside of these exemptions, that's pretty much essential. It can come with stipulations as well, such as controlling the length of sections that you can cite or credit. For instance, we as an academic institution have a CLA license, which lets us share digital extracts of work that we already own as print books, but we are restricted to one chapter of that work per module. So that is governing how we use bits of copyright. We as content producers as well are responsible for checking that we've suitably copyright cleared our work. And these checks are really important just to make sure that we're not breaching regulations. So how does that fit in with AI? Help if I can move the slide deck along. There we go. Brilliant. So I've drawn a very basic diagram of how generative AI works. Let's talk about ChatGPT, sort of one of the main ones of these, but they all function pretty similarly. ChatGPT works by using a training set of data. So the people who made the AI fed large amounts of data into the AI, and they didn't label it in any way, they just gave it to the AI, and it was left to sort of process that information. It was then trained to draw accurate conclusions from that data by AI trainers ranking its responses to questions. So the more you're using a training set, and the more the AI gets a sense of what answers are useful, it can become more accurate. And the training set is deployed whenever a request is received by the AI to generate a relevant answer to your query. So the data within the training set sits there as part of the AI structure until it's called upon to generate the answer to a request. You're possibly starting to see the copyright issue here. So if there is copyrighted work as part of an AI training set, that is a copy under copyright purposes. Originally, government advice, and I know this is advice that other copyright professionals have gone with as well, is that AI falls under the text and data mining exemption, which does still require fair use of copyrighted content, but does allow some access. and it's a bit less stringent on credit because you're data mining. It's not the same as quoting extensively. They have now moved away from that stance in subsequent white papers. Basically because AI is developing too fast and they don't want to introduce regulation that could restrict that growth. So now the approach is a bit more defined by codes of conduct and trying to just keep pace with letting AI develop a bit more before they do legislation. This is beginning to become a bit problematic when you've got copyright holders who are aware that their work is sat within these training sets and they haven't consented to it. So there has been quite a spate of various legal cases. The Atlantic, for instance, has done a series on Books 3, which is a pirated collection of more than going on for 200,000 books that have been used in training sets for different AI products. Meta's now being sued by several writers, including Sarah Silverman, Michael Chambon, and Paul Tremblay, over their work being put into the AI. And publishers as well are moving to protect their work from this perceived threat. So, for instance, LexisNexis now includes in their terms and conditions that they do not consent to their content being put into an AI data set. If it fell under the text and data mining exemption, that kind of regulation couldn't happen, but it's unclear where it sits right now. We have also got the scale of copyright theft is just massive. The Copyright Licensing Agency has surveyed a range of creatives to see the impact, and 76% were aware of their work being used in training sets without their consent. Not only is there the copyright concern of content being held without creators' consent, but there's a bit of a fear of plagiarism as well. So, for instance, the New York Times case that they're bringing against ChatGPT OpenAI is predicated on their work. Quite a few New York Times articles sit within the training set, and if you put in the correct prompt, it can come up as a response to a chatbot query. But that work is, one, they didn't give consent, and two, it sits behind a paywall normally. Until copyright law catches up with AI developments, we have to be a bit careful with our usage. Because if we put copyrighted data into a chatbot at the moment, and terms and conditions allow that copyright data to become part of the training set, there's a lot of legal ambiguity. So we at Leeds Beckett have basically been advising academics to try and keep their copyright content. They don't put it into the AI if that is under the terms and conditions being incorporated into a training set, and to also be careful with other people's copyrighted content. Oops, sorry about that. The other issue, which is the one I'm sure a lot of people are aware of, is AI hallucinations. It's not just an issue of not crediting sources, but there's an issue of hallucinating new ones. Because it's producing results tailored to a prompt, it'll be a bit too eager to please, and it will really want the perfect answer for what you're talking about, even if it has no answer, in fact. The paper I've put on the screen is really interesting. Goddard talks about having asked ChatGPT about tick ecology on specific subject areas that he was interested in. The AI cited a paper in a well-regarded journal by known researchers, but looking for the article showed it didn't exist, and the supposed authors denied all knowledge of it. You might also be familiar with the recent legal case of Stephen Schwartz, a lawyer who used ChatGPT to find precedents for a legal case he was working on. He'd learned about ChatGPT from his children and was under the impression it was an advanced search engine. And it turned out that all the precedents they'd found were imagined. There was no real case similar to what he was researching. So it had just made up some cases to fit the request. The final big issue is who owns AI created works. So I've put the selfie monkey on the screen, being the sort of landmark case in this area. Basically, the wildlife photographer David Slater set up his camera in a group of monkeys so they might come and take selfies, producing this. He argued that due to his preparation, he owned the photo. Wikimedia, however, owned that the copyright is held by the creator, and a non-human creator can't hold copyright as they're not a legal person. Therefore, the image is in the public domain. Legal experts in both the UK and USA ruled that Slater hadn't really had enough involvement to claim copyright, and the US Copyright Office ruled that works made by a non-human are non-copyrightable. Arguably, the same applies to AI. It's not a human, so it can't own copyright, and the work is in the public domain. UK government consultations seem pretty clear that they want to maintain this definition. It's worth noting not all countries do. India have recently deemed an AI to be co-creator of a piece of artwork inspired by Starry Night. But if that does come under review, that doesn't make the problem go away. I've put a bit of an example on the screen there, because if I was, say, to ask an AI to generate a landscape in the style of David Hockney, it's not clear who actually owns the copyright. The AI, but it's not human, so it really shouldn't own copyright. The generator, the AI prompt software didn't create it, but they coached the AI into producing a good result. Myself as the creator of putting in the prompt, I crafted what I wanted, I got a good result, and I'm saying, yes, this is the product I wanted. Or is it someone like David Hockney himself, whose work was the model for it? And it's just not clear. Until we get a bit more clarity, it's going to continue being a copyright minefield. This is quite an interesting case as well. It's worth noting that AI companies are starting to become aware of the copyright concerns of the general public. When I was writing this talk, I was looking into image generation options within the library, and I found our main image generator options were a bit paywalled, Midjourney and Adobe Firefly. So we're looking into alternatives, and I decided to ask the chatbot Claude what I could use. This is the response I got. We're still in the early stages, but they do seem to be responding to the large amounts of legal cases. And here's roughly what they're doing about it. There are sort of three main measures moving forward. We've got companies who are ring fencing content and securing data. Several AI companies are offering versions of their programs that don't harvest your inputs for training. Microsoft Copilot and ChatGPT, to name but two, that let you opt out. We as an institution are using Copilot and are encouraging academics to use the opt-out version. New generative AI is being developed that is built entirely on copyright licensed content. Thus far, none of those have really properly launched to get a sense of quality, but definitely something I'm interested in keeping an eye out for. And we've also got AI companies making agreements with copyright holders for their content. Apple now have licensed news content, and OpenAI have a deal with Axel Springer. It would be a way of avoiding big law cases with large copyright holders, such as the MIT case. So it makes sense they're going down this route. So we've talked a lot about the problems. Let's actually talk about what AI is good at and where does it fall down. This section is based on the research of Matthias Dilling and Leah Owen, who've very kindly let me talk about this. They have done a project where they wanted to study ChatGPT and how it would impact on assessment using Bloom's taxonomy. But I think this is quite good at applying to AI more generally. They wrote 20 essay questions and generated 40 essays on ChatGPT with the prompt that's on the screen. They then marked them like they would a human student. So the positives: it produces good quality essays, mid-50s to early 60s grade-wise. Unlike humans, whose efficiency deteriorates the higher you go up Bloom's taxonomy, AI doesn't. If anything, it improves. So it is quite good at producing quality written matter. However, it doesn't critically analyze enough to get higher grades, and references a pretty small number of sources that it can misattribute. Around 35% of the essays feature misattribution or misidentification of authors' positions. It's also got a tendency to miss the point of questions at higher levels. Their overall conclusions is AI is quite good at classic prompts, where students need to recap or use abstract concepts. It's quite good at analysing specific excerpts of text or producing scholarship that looks superficially convincing. But it's bad at case studies, it's bad at information retrieval, and it's not good at any detail-heavy assessment types, critical assessments of readings, or staking out strong conclusions. It's worth us bearing in mind as we sort of go ahead and use AI. So to sort of draw to a bit of a close, I'm aware I've talked a lot about the various problems that might come across and some of the benefits, but obviously the software isn't going to go back in the bottle. We want to just make the best use of it. So we as AI users, how do I advise the other people within the library, staff and students. I personally think we need to consider the following questions. What AI software am I using? Who created it? And what is the data set? What purpose am I using the AI for? Is this something it's going to be good at, or is it something I'm going to have to edit quite a bit later? What happens to the information I input into the AI? Is it going to cause copyright issues? And have I cross-checked the output from the AI is accurate and reliable? Thank you very much for listening. I've put some of the resources that I used to study for this on the screen there, and I think I can see some questions popping up in chat.
Thank you very much, Liesl. That's brilliant. Yes, we've got some questions I can see. So one here from Kay. How do we opt out, how do we use the opt-out version of Copilot? Can you please illustrate?
So in our case, we're quite lucky because our IT turned it off at the mains effectively. We've got an institutional version and they've made a point of switching on the opt-out function automatically. So staff are automatically signed up for that. I believe, so I know how it works with ChatGPT because that you have to set up yourself. There should be an option in your settings, which you go and tweak. If that is a case of you've got institutional access, I would ask your IT team. If they haven't switched that functionality on, I would personally really recommend they do. And I see I've got something from Louise as well.
Louise has asked, are you fielding a lot of questions from academics and researchers about the use of AI in their work?
So it's kind of which came first, the chicken or the egg. Leeds Beckett were very quick off the mark. We got out guidance very early about academic misconduct, and now we've got a much broader set of AI guidelines that we have on our website. So we preempted the questions and did a lot of outreach to academics. That being said, we've got some really enthusiastic academics who want to use it. So they've been quite good at sort of coming and asking us and saying, you know, I'm not sure if this is okay. But it's been a nice sort of marriage of us trying to provide them with solutions before they know they need them as well.
Yeah. Okay. And I know from my own experience, I mean, I'm not an AI adopter at all. I like when you've mentioned about the copyright issues and things like that, I've kept very much away from it, but I'm conscious that our students are very keen on embracing all it has to offer. And I think this copyright thing is a really interesting area. And presumably it sounds as though it's a very grey area.
Yeah.
And all this issue of things, I've heard instances where students say that they're, you know, if they're making notes from an article that's behind a paywall, and that article then presumably is going into the public domain. Is that an issue?
The New York Times case is well worth, honestly, anyone who is not remotely IT literate, that is the case I'd keep an eye on if I were you. Because they've got really good illustrations of how when copyright material's in the training set, if you're clever with your prompts, you can get it to spit out things that you want.
Yeah.
Including the whole article.
Scary. It's a scary world we live in.
Joys of tech.
Yes. Okay. Thank you ever so much, Liesl. That was brilliant. Great presentation. Thank you.